The old Chinese curse, may you always live in interesting times, regardless of its origin, is very applicable to the current times. Get your iodine KI tablets ready, kids. We have a lot to cover on this Russia-Ukraine war update and an overview of the geopolitical sphere. Welcome to The Real Report, and thank you for tuning in. Make sure to smack that like button, subscribe with the notification bell, and seriously, get involved in the comment section below with any commentary, questions, concerns, or just comment an emoji because it's going to help with the video and the algorithm, which I desperately need. I just thought this was interesting on the screen right now. What originally started as a meme is now our reality. Somewhere between apocalypse, end of the world, that warm fuzzy radiation, and still having to go to work. I don't know about you guys, but it is... It truly is bizarre. I really don't know what to think about that anymore. So try not to let it get you down. You got to keep doing what you got to do. But just know we're all in the exact same boat together. And I imagine pretty much everyone has a similar feeling about this very chart. Now, getting into things, update the Russian message to the United Nations Security Council. The development of the Kiev dirty bomb system has reached its final stage, which we're going to talk about more, but that was definitely worth mentioning because things are certainly escalating, and in more ways than one. We've also got the 101st Airborne right on the border of Ukraine. I don't want to fearmonger, but things are escalating, and I think we're about to boil over the pot, and things are about to go hot. You've also got, of course, we now need to worry about North Korea and their not quite skirmishes, but their threats with South Korea. It's not just Russia, Ukraine, it's not just China, Taiwan, which of course the State Department now says they're going to take by the end of the year, which in case you haven't looked at your calendar, there's only 2 months left in 2022, so things are moving quickly. Now, exclusive U.S. considers Hawk air defense equipment for Ukraine. Now, there's a lot of headlines, so I'm mostly going to skip the meat of the information for this report. However, if you guys want to comment down below, I can certainly dive deeper into things in more videos. And the United States is considering sending older Hawk air defense equipment from storage to Ukraine to help it defend against Russian drone and cruise missile attacks from 2 U.S. officials. The Hawk interceptor missiles would be an upgrade to the Stinger missile systems, a smaller, shorter range air defense that the U.S. has already sent to blunt Russia's invasion. Now, also, German president takes over an air raid shelter on Ukraine trip, takes cover in air raid shelter on his Ukraine trip. That's from just this morning. German President Frank Walter was forced to take cover in an air raid shelter Tuesday during his first visit to Ukraine since Russia's invasion, 6 months after the president, then under heavy criticism for his years-long policy with Moscow, was snubbed by Kiev. After arriving in the capital, he headed to the northern town, but was forced to take cover when sirens went off. We spent the first hour and a half in an air raid shelter, so we got quite the interesting visit. Russia ramps up production of all types of weapons. From an official, Dmitry Medvedev addressed Russia's opponents and advised them not to hope that the country would run out of armaments. Now, Moscow, Russia's boosting production of, again, all types of weapons from tanks, guns, high-precision missiles, drones. Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev said Monday the production of weapons and special equipment of all types is increasing many-fold, from tanks and guns, again, to what I just mentioned. Politician addressed Russia's opponents and advised them not to hope that the country would run out of armaments. Now, even if they're not high-tech, you guys got to remember from the Cold War, Russia, this is not biased, I am more or less anti-war. I don't support either side, but this is just factually, objectively true that Russia has endless fields, bunkers, hangars full of equipment from the Cold War. Now, yes, a lot of it is dated, but from guns to ammo to bombs, there is an incalculable amount in storage, and don't think otherwise. Now, again, that's not the all latest, greatest tech, but they have a lot of things in storage that they can use. Now, Romanian defense minister resigns after backlash for saying Ukraine may have to give up territory to end the proxy war. Romania's Minister of Defense, Vasile Dinsu, handed in his resignation on Monday. Apologies if I butchered his last name. On Monday, after incurring a backlash for publicly suggesting that Ukraine may have to give up some territory in order to end the ongoing military conflict with Russia, which we've got some interesting stuff to talk about. If you guys remember that flight that went into Ukraine a couple months in, had ding, 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 Boris Johnson on board, and promptly with him leaving, Ukraine said, yeah, negotiations off. We're not interested in that with the Russians, when it was looking like they were going to take the 4 regions and call it quits, which obviously did not happen. So people are starting to realize that the consequences, whether it's with the energy crisis or the fact that the entire world is being bled dry, both financially and through equipment, we can't sustainably fuel or fund Ukraine for, decades to come. So people are finally realizing it might be better to just cut the losses sooner than later. Russia takes case of Ukraine's dirty bomb plan to the United Nations. Now, of course, Russia has doubled down on the claim that Ukraine is developing a dirty bomb to use on its own soil, notifying the United Nations about the allegation and planning to raise the issue at the Security Council. They are alleging that Ukraine is developing a dirty bomb on its own territory, with Lieutenant General Igor Krylov, the chief of the Russian Radiation, Chemical, and Biological Protection Force, that Kiev was in the final stage of developing such a bomb. Of course, new troubling developments with Russia's nuclear arsenal. It's not just Kiev. The report comes as Russia accuses Ukraine of preparing to use a dirty bomb or even a nuclear bomb as Russia continues its invasion in Ukraine. Senior U.S. official told the New York Times on Tuesday there are new troubling developments involving Russia's nuclear arsenal. The official, who asked to remain anonymous, would not provide any further details, but the report comes as Russia has accused Ukraine again, dirty bomb, nuclear bomb, etc., as the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the southeast of the country pushes on, specifically towards Kherson. Claims have sparked concerns that Russia could be preparing a false flag attack to justify an escalation of means, which I don't know about that one, just because if they wanted to escalate, they could certainly do that, because frankly the repercussions would be pretty non-existent from the West, especially heading into winter right now, which I need to make multiple videos on the energy crisis. And of course, I got to make another video on you must eat the bugs, because there are some mind-numbingly ludicrous articles, which unfortunately they're not even funny because they're dead serious. They want you to own nothing. They want you to be, quote, happy and eat the crickets. Iran selling body armor helmets, Arash 2 drones to Russia. The Arash 2 suicide drone is reportedly being sold to the Kremlin and will be accompanied by a new group of Iranian advisors to guide the Russian military in the platform's use. That's from the Jerusalem Post. Iran is continuing to expand its defense product sales to Russia with helmets, body armor, and new drones, the Ukrainian intelligence claimed Monday. The Arash 2 suicide drone is reportedly being sold to the Kremlin and will be accompanied by a new group of Iranian advisors and another group of Islamic Revolution Guard Corps. Advisors allegedly arrived in northern Crimean town of Zelensky to assist in the operation of Shahed 136 suicide drones and Mohair 6 reconnaissance drones. So it's pretty funny when you look at the dialogue between countries right now, specifically the West accusing Iran of sending drones. Iran says no. Russia refuses to comment. We have the footage, okay? Anyone with more than a room temp IQ can put 2 and 2 together. We have factual proof. Of course, they're being used on the ground in Ukraine. To think otherwise is ridiculous. But I just think it's funny how these organizations work, like the UN, NATO. Don't do it. I'm warning you. I'm warning you. If you do it, we'll have a meeting. I'm warning you. We'll have a meeting to schedule that meeting, and then we'll meet to then meet you guys and say bad, and that's, people don't understand that the wars aren't won on the ground by having meetings about meetings. They are won with exactly what is happening between Russia and Ukraine with troops, weapons, equipment, etc. Zelensky called on NATO to strike the Kremlin as a retaliatory measure if Russia strikes the president's office in Kiev. So again, more insane rhetoric coming out that they need to preemptively strike each other. cut the head off the snake, if you will. The U.S. division ready to enter Ukraine in case of an attack on NATO. This is probably the biggest takeaway of the entire night. Commander of the 2nd Brigade Combat Team has troops deployed in Romania, have been closely watching the Russian forces. The U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division is ready to enter Ukraine in case of further tension between Moscow and Kiev or an attack on a NATO member state, CBS News reported, which is always interesting when the mainstream media gets involved and gets exclusive coverage in that combat zone, or I should say right outside of it. Citing the division's command staff, we're ready to defend every inch of NATO soil. Troops deployed to Romania have been closely watching the Russian forces, building objectives to practice against and conducting drills that replicate exactly what's going on. Again, replicating exactly what's going on in the war. If I had to speculate, we've already had advisors on the ground since last year. I don't want to say that we're actively okaying strikes or guiding them, but we are certainly involved in every single step of what's been going on with Ukraine. In all, about 4,700 soldiers from the 101st Airborne's home base in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, have been deployed to reinforce NATO's eastern flank, so not good news. U.S. Elite Airborne Division practicing for war near the Ukraine border. The U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division has been deployed to Europe for the first time in 80 years amid soaring tension between Russia and the American-led NATO military alliance. The light infantry unit, nicknamed the Screaming Eagles, is trained to deploy on any battlefield in the world within hours, ready to fight. Here you can see the clip.
At a forward operating site, we watched as U.S. soldiers and Romanian troops pounded targets in a joint ground and air assault. The tank rounds and artillery fire are real. So is the enemy, meant to recreate the fight against Russian forces in Ukraine. A message to Russia and NATO allies alike: we're here.
The real meaning for me to have the American troops here is like if you were to have allies in Normandy before any enemy was there.
In all, roughly 40.
Notice how they're already comparing it to World War II.
700 soldiers of the 101st Screaming Eagles from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, have been deployed to reinforce NATO's eastern flank.
You've had an opportunity to watch, observe, and possibly study the Russians. What do you think of them so far?
So we're closely watching them. So we're building objectives to practice against that replicate exactly what's going on in Ukraine. We're the closest American unit to the fighting in Ukraine.
And what does that feel like? What does that mean?
It keeps us on our toes, right? So it makes my
Ready to fight tonight is a message that we've heard repeatedly. It's not just about defending NATO territory, but if the fight escalates and NATO partners are under threat, they're fully prepared to cross over into Ukrainian territory.
I want you guys to listen to that in case you fell asleep. I'm going to back up like 3 seconds.
Over into Ukrainian territory if ordered to do so.
They will cross into Ukrainian territory if they need to or are ordered to, which, of course...
Ukrainian territory if ordered to do so. Back to you in the studio.
Which, obviously, with the escalation and claims of dirty bombs and everything else going on, and the fact that they're training a mere 5 miles from the conflict, there's a lot of room for error there. Things are not good. And Ukrainian president tells Israeli audience Russia providing Iran with support for its nuclear program in exchange for weapons. Zelensky claimed that Israel's refusal to provide military aid to Ukraine in response to Russia's invasion of his country caused the current military alliance between Russia and Iran. It is all Israel's fault, according to Zelensky. Another interesting one, David Petraeus, ex-CIA director, Give me 1 second here, translate this page again from French. A force led by the United States could intervene in Ukraine. This comes right after, of course, the CBS News coverage. His word is rare, but always very scrutinized. Exclusively for L'Express, David Petraeus, former general of the American Army, commander of the International Assistance and Security Forces in Afghanistan between 2010 and 11, and director of the CIA from 2011 to 12, answered questions on the war in Ukraine and its possible developments. Russia is an extremely difficult situation because Ukraine now has a larger and more capable army on its soil than Russia's, and it does not seem that Vladimir Putin has the possibility of reversing this situation. He understands that Russia has been backed into a corner, and especially with troops now training right on the border. You've got the nuclear exercises, which I'm going to cover in just a second, and of course the claims of a dirty bomb now. Again, there's a lot of room for this thing to mistakenly go hot. Republicans who question U.S. aid to Ukraine may soon have the power to end it. My favorite thing about the upcoming midterm elections, quick point on our domestic issues right now, is the left has caused the energy crisis 100%, and they are running the SPR dry just in time for Republicans to get into office because of the left's mismanagement, which, funny enough, that is when all the side effects will then start to hit, and oil will probably spike 20, 30 bucks a barrel, and then everyone will start to blame the Republicans. So just an interesting little political game for you to ponder. For months, Western diplomats and foreign policy experts have worried that Europe's support for Ukraine might falter as winter arrives and fuel shortages leave people freezing in their homes. United States' continued assistance for the embattled Ukrainians is suddenly in doubt. We can't afford it. Simply look at how inflation is affecting everybody in the United States and how bad things are going to get specifically in Germany, also the UK, and most of the EU countries this winter. But again, Germany is the canary in the coal mine for energy right now. What is a dirty bomb? Russia claims Kiev may use one in Ukraine. This one was from 2 nights ago, so the information I covered at the beginning of the video is the most up to date. But Russian officials are claiming again that Ukraine is planning to use a dirty bomb on its own territory in an attempt to blame the attack on Russia. So, interesting game of cat and mouse going on with absolutely unimaginable consequences. Russia's Shoigu warns of uncontrolled escalation in Ukraine conflict. Sergei Shoigu said Moscow had concerns Ukraine could use a dirty bomb in the conflict. This one's from Fox News. I keep harping on the same point because if you guys haven't watched any of my videos before, I keep commenting they tell you every single time exactly what's going to happen. You know, you can call people conspiracy theorists for picking apart things people said decades ago, but look, pretty much all of it has all come true at this point. You need to understand they tell you the plan. Always. Almost always. It's there in black and white, plain as day. Most people just don't want to accept it. It's called normalcy bias. Look it up. Ukraine is rapidly deteriorating and trending towards uncontrolled escalation. They're saying it, uncontrolled escalation in Ukraine. The IAEA is invited to investigate Russian claims of the bomb inside Ukraine, following Russia's initial major weekend accusation that Ukraine is plotting a dirty bomb false flag incident. The Kremlin has announced it has readied all forces and capabilities to fulfill tasks in conditions of radioactive contamination, alleging Russia will itself, now Ukraine is alleging Russia will install, stage a mass detonation and use it as a pretext for escalation of its invasion. So obviously both sides pointing fingers at each other. Russian occupiers tell Kherson residents to leave immediately. I just found this one interesting because the Indians have also said get out now. The Chinese have also said get out now. Now, Russia urged residents in the southern Kherson region to leave the main city immediately in the face of Kiev's advancing counteroffensive. Russia launched 36 rockets overnight in a massive attack on Ukraine following reported strikes on energy infrastructure that resulted in power outages across the country. Most of it was dark last night. If you guys are on any Telegram Intel channels, they posted it pretty extensively. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, I'm talking 6, 7, 800 cities, all without power. Now, the Indian embassy urges citizens to leave Ukraine, suggests 5 border crossing options. Amid the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, the Indian embassy in Ukraine has suggested 5 options to get out. Get out now. Here we've got biggest Russian air attack so far, missile launches from ships and 9 Tu-160 and Tu-95s. The upgraded cruise missiles may be an indication of preparation for ground attacks by Belarus, some are speculating. So again, keep a very close eye as I keep coming back to when will Belarus enter the fold. And again, Russia warns the dirty bomb false flag plot in a flurry of rare calls to Western leaders, so keep an eye on what the UN decides. Better call Boris. This is one of the other articles that I mentioned when I first started the recording. Ukraine slammed for meddling in UK politics. Ukraine's government seemingly threw its weight behind Bojo to be the next Tory leader, tweeting the following message from its official Twitter account. As we know, Liz Truss was an absolute disaster, but from the current information, I believe Boris Johnson is dropping out of the running again. Half of Dutch people fear Russia will use nuclear weapons in war with Ukraine. So, coming on the 60-year anniversary of the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the United States and Soviet Union seemed poised for nuclear war, the research shows there has been a significant increase in Dutch people who believe there's a chance Russian President Putin will resort to nuclear weapons. So, just another interesting statistic. Total of 84% said they were very or somewhat concerned about the war in Ukraine, and 37% said they think Putin will use nuclear weapons. Public opinion matters. Hungary to ratify NATO's bids of Sweden Finland by year end. Again, just another red line that's going to be crossed in Putin's book. Regardless, right or wrong, has absolutely nothing to do with the consequences. He's told you what's going to happen if they join NATO and more countries surround him who have joined NATO, what the repercussions will be. Do not take it lightly. He has said numerous times he is not bluffing. He is not bluffing. He is not bluffing. How many times do you think he will have a fool made of himself before he does something? It's crazy. And the EU will provide Kiev with another 1.5 billion euros per month next year. And the United States is, of course, sending billions more. And most of, Germany, I think, is sending 500 million a month. As, again, inflation rages worldwide. So, again, that's all I've got for you guys right now. But if you found anything interesting, leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe, share with family, friends, etc., and hit the notification bell to stay up to date. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe out there. Prayers up.